Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 2nd, 2020 Lone Tree City Council meeting. This is our regular scheduled meeting. It is an electronic meeting pursuant to Council adopted policy number 20-01. Our meeting will start at 5:05 to allow time for folks to join us virtually. And while we're waiting, I will describe the process for public comment during our virtual meetings. There are three ways that you can submit comments. First, comments can be submitted ahead of time in writing, and they will be read into the record by one of our staff members. You can also submit a question via text, via the chat function on your screen under the Q&A question area. If you do submit a question there, please know this is not a question and answer portion of our council meeting. This is public comment, which really allows you to provide feedback and comment to council. We will take your comments under advisement and we will direct staff action should that be necessary. You can also request to call in to ask your question or state your public comment. Again, council will not be responding to any questions during council comment. You provide your feedback and we will do follow-up as necessary, whether it be through us, the council, or through staff. So again, thank you for your patience as we wait for folks to join us for our virtual meeting. Sometimes we've recognized it takes a bit to click in through the process. And again, if you want to refer to the slide for the three ways that public comment will be submitted, and we'll just give it a few more minutes here and allow folks to join us. Thank you. Again, you've joined the June 2nd, 2020 Lone Tree City Council meeting. We are pausing until 5:05 to officially open the meeting to allow folks to join us virtually this evening. Again, there are three ways that you may submit public comment. Comments were submitted in advance of the meeting in writing and will be read into record by city staff. You may enter a public comment by clicking Ask a Question in the sidebar, entering your name, address, and comment. Again, this will not be a question and answer period. This is the time for you to provide feedback. If you would like to speak to the council live using your telephone, please indicate that in the Ask a Question sidebar and you will receive a call from the city to hear your public comment. We will be beginning the council meeting in just about 1 minute. I will officially open our meeting. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 2nd, 2020 Lone Tree City Council meeting. I am formally opening our meeting and I will ask our city clerk to take the roll.
Council members Anderson.
Present.
Carpenter.
Present.
Shaw.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Here.
And Mayor Millet.
Here, we have a quorum. I would ask that we all stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no amendments to the agenda and it is adopted as published. Any conflict of interest? And again, I'll ask our city clerk to run quickly through our council.
Council members Anderson.
No conflict.
Carpenter.
None.
Shaw.
None.
Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
None.
And Mayor Millet.
None, and I'm glad to hear it, everyone. All right, now is the portion of public comment. I gave instructions for public comment at the beginning of our meeting, but again, if you are online and would like to submit public comment, there are two ways to do that. Through the Ask a Question function on your screen, just click on that and type your question, or indicate that you would like a call from one of our staff people and you can get on a phone call and ask your question that way. I do know there was comment submitted ahead of time, so I will go ahead and ask our city clerk to summarize that comment. But again, if you are online and you would like to ask a question, please, provide comment, please do that through the Ask a Question box or request to connect via a conference call. So Jay, while we're waiting, why don't you go ahead and read the written or summarize the written comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This comment was submitted from Kristen Robinson from 12782 Red Rosa Circle in Parker. And we did not display her full comments, but those will be sent to the council individually and included as part of the record of tonight's meeting. But she submitted a comment on House Bill 19-1234, which relates to regulated marijuana delivery. This bill is very important to my family. My husband and I are both patented inventors and business owners in Colorado. We are looking into starting a medical dispensary storefront to be able to provide medical marijuana delivery service to sick patients throughout local counties. We would love to be able to include the city of Lone Tree in providing high quality organic marijuana to medical patients within the city limits. And again, she did submit more comments and we will send her full comments to the council.
Thank you. Jay, have we received any other public comment through our Ask a Question function?
Yes, we received two other comments submitted in advance. One is from Alita Yu from 1814 French Creek Avenue in Parker, and I will read their comments. Although I live in Parker, I frequently shop and do business in Lone Tree. The idea of making it mandatory to wear masks is not only an insult on my civil liberties, but is an example of government overreach at its worst. Why not make it mandatory that we all wear a hijab? There is no current study about the effectiveness of wearing masks. In fact, I have read evidence to the contrary. I need to breathe in fresh air when I am outside. People with compromised immune systems can choose to stay home. Why punish the healthy when what you really want to do is to protect and quarantine those who are ill? I will no longer shop in Lone Tree if this measure is passed. And I had a second comment. No, I'm sorry. Those are all the comments I received.
So we just received two, just to confirm, two written comments ahead of the meeting.
Correct.
Okay, and during the meeting, has anybody requested to participate in public comment?
I do not see any requests in the Q&A box for public comment.
Okay, well, I think since you read the comment, I think we've given enough time, so I will close the period for public comment. I want to thank those that submitted comment to council. Now we'll move on to announcements and presentations. I'll turn it to our city manager, Seth Hoffman, for some opening remarks before staff reports.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. It's good to see you all tonight. We are have actually a fair bit of good news to share in a week that's been somewhat short of it. So I will give a couple highlights just right off the bat, including breaking news. I have a date for the opening of the Cook Creek Pool, which is the question that we've all been asked more than any other in the last couple months. So the Cook Creek will be open for lap swimming on Monday by reservation through South Suburban Parks and Recreation's website. And then the pool will open for recreation with a limited capacity on June 15th. That's how long it basically takes them to get their staff ready to go, which makes some sense. Obviously, they have to do some lifeguard training, and they weren't able to commit to that until they had a new public health order. So Bill's going to talk about those in a few minutes. The other good news is there've been some delays in the other 3 South Suburban pools. They were being reconstructed this year, but it looks like they're all on track and they'll be open on July 1st. Again, likely with limited capacity, but overall, I think that's good news to be able to share. Playgrounds will be able to open and some other things that probably are some of the most asked questions that we've been getting. So some clarity there. And Bill's got all really is our expert on public health orders, and he's going to be talking in a few minutes. I'm just stealing his thunder on the really good stuff. And the other good news is Senior Street, which was a brainchild of the Youth Commission, happened on May 30th. And I hope you saw some of the photos on social media, but we had a really nice turnout for that. And I think it was a great idea. A creative way to recognize our graduating high school seniors. It is looking like there might be a possibility for some graduation still. Their school district is still working on in-person graduation. That's a real high priority for them and maybe delayed a little bit, but they're working on a variance with the state to make that happen. So hopefully they get extra attention with all the stuff that we've done with Senior Street and lighting up the bridge, plus they get an in-person graduation as well. So that would be a great outcome. And then the last thing I wanted to share before I turn it over is we got a really nice comment on our website today that says, want to email a heartfelt thank you to Mayor Millet, council and staff for the consistent way they're handling the many unknowns of what's going on with the virus. The leadership of Lone Tree is logical, communicative, caring, and makes sense. There are so many messages out there, and Lone Tree is steadfast and provides guidance to the right path. Thank you so much. So that was nice to hear today. So appreciate that feedback from a Lone Tree resident, and I think it's well deserved for mayor and council and of course all of our staff that are answering questions all day long about can I do this or can I do that and why not. So with that, I think we will turn it over to mostly Jeff, but a little bit of Chief Wilson to give an update on the good news about business reopenings.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. Mayor and council, great to see you tonight. And I do have some updates and some good news to share as well. Some of it you know, some of it may be new to you, and it's all involving our business community. So next slide, please. The big news, of course, of the last couple weeks has been the approval of the variance request that Douglas County submitted for the opening of Park Meadows, as well as our restaurant community. And obviously that's important to us, and it's led to a lot of activity at the mall itself. It opened on Sunday following the announcement, Sunday the 24th of May, and has been operating and growing in its numbers since its opening. In fact, last Friday, which is the last day we have data for, which is May 29th, there were roughly 15,000 visitors at the mall. which is about half of a typical Friday if we look at round numbers. And we'll have last weekend's numbers very shortly within the next couple of days, and we'll share that with everyone as well. But that growth is exciting, and we're supportive of everything around it as well. The anchor stores, we weren't sure at what volume they or what rate they would open up. All the anchor stores at the mall have opened, and we're pleased with the way it's going and the way the management is handling it. Of course, a great big thanks to Douglas County and their work with the variance request, and other news today, the extension of Colorado's safer at home order did not include indoor malls as part of what they've allowed for opening. So we're very pleased that we've received this variance, because the individual counties will still have to ask for variances for their indoor malls located in their cities or within the county. A step further, all of our big box retailers are generally open. It'd probably be better to give a report on what isn't open than what they are. So that's good news. A few that remain or linger include the Epic Mountain Gear store. That's probably related to Vail Resorts and some of their activity, but generally, even as of last weekend, some of the last that we're holding on, Bed Bath & Beyond, Barnes & Noble finally reopened. So we've seen quite a bit of activity there as well. And then in addition to that, it's worth noting what else isn't open. The movie theater in the entertainment district, Bolero in the entertainment district, they're also now potential for a variance request from Douglas County, and there's work being done to push that along. And then some other interesting things that though the Marriott on Park Meadows Drive can be open, they have chosen not to open just yet. And that remains a vacant property, but we haven't had contact with the general manager, so there are people in the building. And then really what's interesting is in our office sector, that's where we've seen pretty little traffic. A lot of these entities want to continue to social distance, which is a good thing. So Charles Schwab, the insurance companies such as CNA and Allstate, or Canvas Credit Union, as you see in the bottom photo, are remaining to work at home, and their parking lots appear empty even on a weekday. And even when the gas line broke last Friday afternoon, what typically would be a very busy moment of traffic really was a pretty quiet evening for traffic. So that helped them a little bit. But we'll be in touch with our office employers to make sure they're doing well, and keep a track of when they plan to bring folks back into the office. And from here, I can turn it over to Chief Wilson about some other updates about reopening.
I probably don't have a whole lot to update when it comes to business openings, but I would say things are going pretty well from a standpoint as far as law enforcement standpoint. We haven't had a ton of questions from businesses, but that haven't already been fielded, by Bill or Jeff. But I think it's gone really well, and I think our relationships are pretty strong. Where we've probably spent the most focus over the last 2 weeks is Park Meadows, and working with Pam and making sure that we have presence there, and we've brought in extra people at times, and really try to beef up our presence on the Park Meadows campus all the way around it. And we'll continue to do that over the next week or so, particularly with some of the things that have happened nationally as far as some looting and that type of stuff. So I think a good police presence there. Again, our goal is to make sure it stays open and nothing occurs there. So that's primarily what we've been focused on this last week or so. And then we'll just continue to do that. That's probably really all. I mean, I think from my standpoint, it's probably the highlights.
Okay, any questions from council for the chief or for Jeff? All right, so it looks like we're moving on to Jay on the temporary modification permits for Lone Tree restaurants.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. This relates to our businesses reopening because the state is allowing temporary modification permits to be processed quickly. and at the local and state level to allow our restaurants to utilize outdoor public space that is attached to the restaurant or near the restaurant. Go ahead and give me the next slide, please. Yep, so we'll talk about what temporary modification means and how the city has the administrative authority to execute these requests. We'll talk about the process, what that looks like, some examples, some stuff we're seeing right now, and some current applications, and some that I'm sure you've heard have already been approved. Next slide, please. So usually the temp modification is used seasonally when we have good weather outside and a single restaurant wants to expand its serving and eating area into a public street or sidewalk or open space area. The photo you see there is from Spoons and Tunes, and I hope everyone had a chance to take advantage of that event last summer, where GQ Barbecue, expanded into the Vistas alleyway.
I think we have a problem with the video.
Yeah, we lost.
Screen. We lost the pretty picture.
Sorry, give me 1 minute. Someone took over control by accident, I think.
But Jay, you look like you're very busy with your calendar.
Oh, right. Thank you.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Should be fixed.
Thanks, Kristen.
We're back.
So, so we all remember Spoons and Tunes last year, but now the state has utilized this tool to help our restaurants reopen and adhere to the restrictions of social distancing and utilizing outdoor space. So as the last bullet says, with COVID restrictions, the state is processing these along with the local government to allow restaurants really to utilize the good summer weather, and you may see some of these expansions open for some time. Go ahead and give me the next slide, please. So you recall in the municipal code, the city manager or his or her designee has several powers to execute matters related to liquor licensing, and that includes the approval of any application to temporarily modify a premises. And this is great that we've already anticipated this authority. It's allowed us to react quickly to our restaurants reopening. And some cities have scrambled to adopt these types of authorities before being able to move forward. So for that, we thank the council for being proactive and allowing city staff to review these types of cases in helping our restaurants. Next slide, please. This is a diagram we created for our bars and restaurants to walk them through the process. I know it looks a little complicated, but the state is allowing concurrent review to occur once we receive an application, and we're also reviewing these applications, and then they're able to submit an online payment to the state, and the city has actually waived any application fees for bars and restaurants that are submitting. Next slide, please. So the first application we received and we approved was for Grist, and the diagram shows like a server walkway from the brewery out to the parking lot where they want to set up either a large tent or several smaller tents to allow them to serve outside, to adhere to social distancing requirements, as well as utilizing outdoor space. And I'll say one other thing about this application. It was actually one of the first applications approved by the state. I think we were number 3 in the state to get this temporary modification approved. Go ahead, move to the next slide, please. Another one is for Corneli's. Corneli's has requested to utilize their front patio and sidewalk space, and that was recently approved on May 28th. I don't know if anyone has been over there yet to see this change, but we were happy to work with them and kind of capture the expansion that they were picturing. Next slide, please. Yep, and one that was approved this morning was Sierra Restaurant. They want the right to expand into their upper parking lot, which will be divided by, or roped off rather, to control egress. They're also, in addition to serving, setting up tables and serving in the parking lot area, they will also be hosting a farmer's market from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Saturday between June 13th and September 26th. So we were happy to see Sierra get submitted and approved, and the state is able to turn these around. This one, for example, turned around within 3 business hours.
Wow. So
these are turning around relatively quickly, and we're just trying to get them in the best shape as possible for our restaurants and bars. So you see the 3 that we covered there: the Grist parking lot plan, the Corneli's expansion, and the Sierra parking lot plan. We've received an additional application for White Chocolate Grill, and we're also working with the other restaurants listed on the right, and expect that most of these will also be submitting applications for temporary modification. And with that, I will just, again, thank the council for trusting in staff, giving us the authority to act quickly with our bars and restaurants, to utilize this tool in response to the COVID restrictions, to allow outdoor seating and social distancing.
Thanks, Jay. So council, quickly run through to see if there's any questions. Councilmember Anderson, I know this is a new topic for us.
No questions. Glad to see the process is working and the state is cooperating in terms of timely turnaround. And just hope that everybody that participates in these opportunities respects the limits and of where things are authorized and not authorized, and that it all goes smoothly.
Great. Councilmember Carpenter?
Yeah, no question, just a comment. Yeah, so great flexibility and creativity. Really appreciate you doing everything we can to support our businesses. So look forward to frequenting them with you all.
Yeah, I know I'll see you there. Councilmember Shaw.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for the speedy turnaround and the flexibility, and I am so glad there's space for our businesses to, sidewalk space or parking lot space for our businesses to use and to provide that dining out experience. So thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Hey Jay, I just had one question about parking in these cases where I think I know the answer on Sierra, because we had a meeting earlier in the week specific to that, where they're taking advantage of some other shared parking that they can use. But in the cases like for Grist, are we doing a review to make sure there's adequate parking then in other parts of the locations? Is that part of the assessment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in some of these cases, we're bringing Julius into the review process. And in the example of Grist, they were required to request the temporary use permit for the parking issue. So Julius is helping us review all of these applications, and sometimes the local temporary use permit is required as well.
So to demonstrate that there is shared parking available in the other locations. And I think for Grist right now, with the movie theater being closed, there probably is a little extra parking, but I think as the movie theater opens, I recognize Sweet Tomatoes is probably not going to be reopening. So it is a bit of a balancing act also then with the reduced capacity in some of those businesses. There probably is that parking, but I do think it is something that we probably need to continue to monitor as we see more of these come in within the city. So I think that's a great point, Kathy.
Yeah, no, super support like everybody else. You know, this kind of flexibility is just so critical as we watch all these fine establishments try to get back up and operational and able to make a profit based on, you know, the numbers. So we're really hopeful that we can continue to accommodate without then subsequently making other issues, you know, for them around the parking. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and Jay, I want to say a huge thanks to you and the team within the city that is working hard to make sure we're executing a speedy review of these and moving them along as quickly as possible. So thank you for that. And also, I'm going to invite council to join me on June 13th because I'm very excited to go to that farmers market. So let's all try and get up there and see each other. So wonderful news on that. And then I think we're going to go over to Bill Medina for the public health order update. So Bill, that was the fun topic. You got hard reality now coming with you.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's only Tuesday, but it seems like it's been a busy week already. Of course,
I think it's Friday. It's happy hour. No, I'm
All right.
Of course, yesterday the governor came out with his new executive order, Safer at Home. Can we go to the next slide, please? Safer at Home in the vast great outdoors. So I'd say, you know, based on the modeling discussion that he had at the end of last week, the theme for this modification is that there are some loosening restrictions, and I'll talk to those in a few minutes. But the general theme is that there's still going to need to be a high level of social distancing, especially as it comes to vulnerable individuals. In this executive order, he does ask them to stay at home, but also ask them to take advantage of the outdoor spaces, which can be safe with social distancing. And it continues to ask people to telework if possible. One of the things that I did want to highlight is that throughout this new order, face coverings still figure prominently as a strategy to reduce the spread of COVID. So we did a review today to kind of understand exactly where all of the face covering requirements lie within the different public health orders. And across 3 different public health orders, through 11 different sectors of the economy, face coverings are required. So that might be required for staff and customers or just staff. So that covers everything from healthcare, limited healthcare, personal services, critical, non-critical retail. So it's throughout the public health orders, but it's also included in the Douglas County variances in all 4 of the variances that are approved for Douglas County. So face coverings will still be a part of the landscape for the near future. If we can go to the next slide, please. So today, the public health order responding to that executive order direction from the governor was released this afternoon at about 1:30. And so they published some new guidance on short-term rentals, really basic hygienic cleaning of the facilities, but also asking that there be a 24-hour period between occupancy, which I think might be a little bit challenging for some people to handle. There is revised guidance pending for personal services and childcare. So with personal services, they stated that on the 4th of June, they can go to 50% capacity, not to exceed 50 people, which is a significant improvement over the 10 people right now. I anticipate that there's going to be some additional guidance that comes along with that, but that was the major change that was included in the public health order. For childcare, it's allowing on the 4th of June for childcare facilities to operate under their licensed capacity, which right now they're limited. So as with each of the major changes, we've seen the state kind of roll things out in a different way each time. This time around, they asked the public for input to the guidance that will be published for houses of worship, personal recreation, and the outdoor industry. Now, they already are included in the public health order, so I anticipate that The guidance is going to provide some more fidelity. Maybe it will change some of the things that are in the order, but currently houses of worship are able to operate under 50% capacity, up to 50 people. With the outdoors, that's for indoor settings. With outdoor settings, they're just required to have adequate social distancing. The personal recreation covers playgrounds, organized sports, pools, and gyms. And of course, this is what Seth was talking about with the pool being able to open. That's going to be limited to up 50% capacity or 50 people, but household groups will still need to be social distanced within the pool and in the pool area. Organized sports, up to 25 people participating in an outdoor venue, 10 people in an indoor venue. And then gyms, I think the Douglas County variance is actually more liberal on the amount of people that you can have in the gyms. So that one will probably revert to Douglas County. With outdoor industry, that really talks about rafting companies, fly fishing tour guides, those kind of outdoor industries that are focused during the summertime. And so really in there, there's just a lot of general social distancing guidelines talking about transportation and making sure that vehicles have open windows and sanitation occurs in between tours. So that's really the major changes that we saw in the orders. Like I said, there's going to be more specific guidance, sector specific, for each of those 3 bottom areas that should come out here in the coming days. By the 6th is what we're anticipating. Do I have any questions?
Okay, so we'll start in a different direction this time. Mayor Pro Tem Brunick, questions?
Yeah, so Bill, thank you for that. Super helpful. I know we get tons of questions just randomly, so it's so nice to have the update. I did have one question about gyms in particular in this newest order. This is one of the areas where people in our region really cross territory, right? So they might be going to Parker, to the Lifetime there, or to our rec center. And so are the current rules very different by the different areas, and then subsequently with the order for Douglas County, or is there some general answer about what's going to be available that we could use for gyms?
So the rules are between Douglas County and the state order are slightly different. In personal training for the state, it only allows up to 4 individuals, which includes the instructor. For Douglas County, it allows mixed groups of up to 10. So there is somewhat of a difference there. I was talking with Seth, and I think we probably need to, once the guidance, the sector specific guidance gets actually finalized, we probably need to make some kind of chart in order to demonstrate the differences that exist between the Douglas County variances and the state orders.
That'd be great. Okay, thank you. I'll watch for, something that helps us at least articulate what's happening at the different places that we might encounter. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Councilmember Shaw?
I think a chart would be very helpful to point out the differences. That's wonderful. Thanks for thinking ahead on that.
Councilmember Carpenter?
Yeah, it'd also be help. Thanks, Bill. It would also help to keep marketing this to the residents so they know. I know it's so fluid and dynamic. However, things are starting to open up, and just so there's clarity around what Douglas County is doing, what the state's doing, and it'll be interesting to see what happens on the 6th for the next round. But thanks for staying on top of it.
Councilmember Anderson?
Nothing further. To look forward to seeing what the guidance is so that we can answer questions when they come up. Thank you.
Thanks. And again, Bill, I just want to say tremendous thanks to you getting through all of this in a brief period of time today. So very much appreciated. We know you're on top of it, and we're looking forward to the updates. And I know I don't need to say this, but as we get them, and even regarding the updates, we heard from our great city manager, Seth, about the rec centers pushing that out on our website as soon as possible so we can point people to that. And I know there'll be rounding cheers throughout the community about the news Seth shared about the pool. So thank you again for the good work. And we are going to move on to legislative update and CARES Act funding update with Jeff Hallwell. So Jeff, you get to start and end it. So thanks.
Well, thank you again, Mayor and Council, and a few updates for you tonight. In the middle of all of this, the General Assembly has also convened and working hard at things completely related to COVID-19, but also old business that they needed to wrap up, and I wanted to give you an update on some of the things we were watching and some things we will need to be watching in the coming days around the General Assembly. So next slide, please. First of all, the big thing that we're all aware of is that their primary purpose before they conclude is to solve the decreasing state budget. The long bill has been introduced, House Bill 1360. The House is debating it, and in much of their study, they anticipate over $3 billion in reductions to the state budget, which of course has a far-reaching impact statewide. And we'll keep watching this. They today and yesterday kicked it to further down the road, so it's not been approved by the House, but they're working hard on this and will be for the remainder of the session. Next slide, please. But this one's interesting. The bill, House Bill 21,001, the nicotine product regulation relating to vaping, is still alive and well. In fact, since I've updated this slide this afternoon, the Senate Committee on Appropriations moved it to the full Senate for their consideration. So it is on track to make it through. On one hand, they need to because they need to follow federal regulations, but what this also means for us is what we presumably will pass. We'll be needing to consider our own ordinance to follow the new state regulations. So stay tuned to this, but it is alive and well, and we weren't quite sure of that when they reconvened as a legislature. Next slide, please. This is just news for you. Since we've had a legislative update, the creation of the 23rd Judicial District, that bill was signed by the governor. It had a fiscal note, so it may have been risky if it was done any later, but the governor signed it on March 20th, and we do anticipate the creation of the 23rd Judicial District in the years to come. Next slide, please. The Sales and Use Tax Simplification Task Force is also another bill that we've been, or another policy that we've been heavily involved with. And though this date looks really old, it's good. It means they're not moving it quickly to either postpone forever or kill the bill. We anticipate that this bill will get passed, and we will see a continuation of this task force, and we'll remain involved with that as well. Next slide, please. This one's interesting. We might remember the construction defects dialogue, one that did get amended, Senate Bill 93, to that we were generally in the construction industry was generally happy with the amendments. Is a bill that's still alive and well. Senate Bill 93 has now been introduced in the House and assigned to Finance, so it was sent out of the Senate, and now the House will consider it. And though I think it's probably okay, we need to keep our eye on this because in the House they also may try to add back some of the language that they got out of it in the Senate back when the legislature was meeting earlier this winter. Next slide, please. And this is a two-part discussion. First, you might remember the very large RTD bill, Senate Bill 151, that was to, of course, add an accountability committee, but do a whole bunch of other things as well. This was postponed indefinitely just a few days ago by the Senate. However, we do anticipate another bill to be introduced that will be strictly tied to accountability for brevity. That will be a board created by the state for accountability to the RTD, and we'll be watching that as they introduce it and be answering questions as that comes up as well. Next slide, please. House Bill 1376. This is also just an FYI that you might remember that there was anticipated to be a ballot question this November to allow the state to issue trans bonds for the purpose of constructing future highway improvements. And though it was kicked to this year because of ballot initiatives last year, well, now they've again decided that they want to kick it to 2021. So this bill is designed, and it's likely to pass, that we will not be seeing a ballot question this November. Next slide, please. A couple around FPP and para. The first one, House Bill 1044. We were watching this during the session. It involves increasing contributions to the Fire and Police Pension Association. it was it passed the legislature before all of this the pandemic occurred, or before the lockdown occurred, but the governor did sign it on April 1st of this year. Next slide, please. And in a similar genre, the para is under consideration for additional legislation as well. You might remember last year in 2019, the state agreed to fund para at $250 million this year to help shore up its long-term funded status. Well, in order to deal with the fiscal emergency, the state has introduced House Bill 1379 to suspend the upcoming $250 million state distribution for para. And though it's of course necessary in this emergency, it does postpone and potentially has some longer-term ramifications for the 2019 para reforms. What also accompanies this is there were anticipated, but it did not happen, other bills that would stall the increasing contributions by the employer and employees to para beginning in July of this year, and it sounds like they're not going to do that. So we budgeted for it, but we do anticipate increasing contributions become July 1. Next slide, please. These are all new since the legislature reconvened, but there are a handful of employment bills. One is sick leave for employees. The other is related to the payment of unemployment insurance programs by the private sector. And then others that haven't been introduced, presumptive eligibility for workers' compensation, meaning that it would, if someone had a COVID diagnosis, there would be a presumption that they got it at their workplace. And then finally, whistleblower protections around COVID-19. These employment issues are have now crept in to the conversation, and some have more tied to local government than others, but I think they're definitely worth watching for our business community and of course the city of Lone Tree as well. Next slide, please. The Gallagher Amendment, you've probably been reading a lot about this lately. There is a Senate concurrent resolution which is basically saying that they want to refer a ballot measure. So SCR 20-001 would be refer a ballot measure to repeal the property tax assessment rates requirement that the General Assembly change the residential assessment rate, meaning it would be a change to the Gallagher Amendment, and that the state itself or the legislature would not have to periodically adjust the residential assessment rate, which is causing a lot of heartburn for property tax types of governments, special districts, as well as county and other forms of government. A little less to the city of Lone Tree, but certainly one to watch as well. This, because it's a resolution to go to the ballot, it would require 2/3 vote from both the Senate as well as the House, and then a majority vote in November. So although it sounds like it's going very quickly, there's a lot of steps to happen before this were to actually happen. And historically, amendments to the ballot measures to repeal Gallagher or modify Gallagher haven't done well in Colorado. We'll see how this one goes, but there's a lot of movement or momentum behind this today. Finally, this is my last slide. The 2020 election, and this is not exactly a legislative issue, but we talked about it last time. The executive order 2020-065, it would suspend the statutes concerning signature collection for ballot issues and authorizing temporary rules to receive and return petitions. This issue was, there was a lawsuit filed by several business groups, including Colorado Concern and the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, against this order, and assuming that it would make it much easier to get ballot issues onto the November election. However, the order was upheld by Denver District Court on May 27th. We anticipate a very quick appeal to the Colorado Supreme Court, so we don't know exactly when that'll happen, but that there's the an appeal is definitely expected. But even taking it a step further, whether or not this does pass or not, there's still 2 months available for petitioners to gather regular signatures by August 4th as well. So I still think beyond electronic signatures, there will be a lot of activity for the good old-fashioned kinds of signatures too before we hit the day of August 4th. And though I didn't make a slide on this, we're also aware of a bill that's been drafted but not yet introduced, what's called Law Enforcement Integrity and Accountability Act. It's related, of course, to the events of the recent days, and it would create a new authority in the Attorney General's office to investigate and potentially take action upon any questions around law enforcement, relating to what we've been again going through in the last few days. So I'm very happy to answer questions, and thank you for a minute of your time tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. That was very, very helpful. All right, so now we'll mix it up again. I'm going to start with Councilmember Carpenter. Questions?
Yeah, no questions, but thanks for staying on top of it, Jeff. As the world turns, it'll be interesting to see how these all play out, but I appreciate you guys staying on top of it.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Shaw?
Thanks, Jeff. I did have a question. I've heard from some neighbors that either the legislature passed or the governor signed an order that eliminated the senior property tax exemption. Do you know anything about that? I hadn't heard anything.
Yes, Councilmember Shaw, that is part of the budget discussion, the 1360, and
so it isn't done.
It is not done. No, I mean I think the Joint Budget Committee, in their work to send it to the full legislature, recommended that, and in fact that was one of the first things up for debate when they began the budget discussions. I think there was even probably some heated debate today around it. So it's part of the budget discussion. It's not done, but it was definitely a recommendation. So there is time though still for changes because it's still in discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson?
Jeff, thank you for the update. Thank you, Wynn, for that question on seniors, because I've heard interest in that topic as well as what's going to happen to the exemption, if anything. And certainly it'll be the topic of elections coming up, and whether or not the process of elections is changed is on a lot of people's minds as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on at the legislative level, and appreciate your following that and keeping us updated, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Yeah, no questions for me. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Okay, and again, Jeff, just my thanks as well for a great job staying on top of all of this. Let's move now to the CARES Act funding update.
Yeah, and this is the final comment, kind of on the same topic. Through an executive order by the governor, the state is now distributing funds from the Coronavirus Relief Fund, which was a part of the CARES Act, passed by Congress in April. And the specifics are listed here, and then a few comments to follow. First, roughly $218 million will now be available to counties and municipalities in Colorado that were not part of the entitled entities in the original CARES Act. So an additional 59 counties out of 65 that will be eligible to receive this. They are distributing it to counties first, and then there'll be followed from there. But to Douglas County, roughly 30 million is available based upon the formula out of that 218 million. And what the current discussion is, but ultimately it'll be up to a lot of stakeholder participation as well as a decision by the commissioners, is that first there will be a work from that fund around testing and tracing, or revenue put towards testing and tracing to support obviously what's happening with the COVID-19 today. And then what's remaining from that would generally follow what's happened statewide in the counties that have already received it. Say Adams, Arapahoe, Jefferson, that 55% would be kept in the county's hands, and then 45% would be distributed to the municipalities. As we understand it, it's actually a reimbursement, so that it's not exactly they're not exactly distributing it, but we'd have to we at least have a formula so we know what would be potentially able to distribute to each municipality in Douglas County. And I will conclude with that it's not done. The discussion around the formula is in progress, And of course, I'm sure you'll probably be involved in some of that too. And ultimately, it's a decision of the commissioners before it's finalized. So happy to answer questions around that as well, but at least there's progress happening.
Okay, and I'm gonna just throw it out with open mic. Does anybody have any follow-up on that CARES Act funding? Okay, we all need to be really nice to our county commissioners for the next few days until they develop that formula. No, I'm kidding. I think it's a very important process, and I know staff has been involved in engaged in conversations, as have I. So we look forward to continue updates on that. So thank you, Jeff, for a very thorough presentation. We're going to move on to our consent agenda now, which includes minutes from the May 19th, 2020 regular city council meeting and claims for the period of April 28th, 2020 through May 26th, 2020. I will ask for a motion from council.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it then.
All those in favor, and I will quickly ask our city clerk to do a roll call vote.
Council members Anderson.
Aye.
Carpenter.
Aye.
Shaw.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Aye.
Mayor Millet.
Aye. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. We have we passed our consent. Moving on now to community development. We have an overview of community development block grant agreement with Douglas County, and we are joined by one of our awesome Lone Tree staff members, Jennifer Drybread, and also a great representative from Douglas County, Jennifer Eby. And I will turn it to Jennifer Drybread to introduce this.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and City Council. I am so pleased and so excited to see this opportunity for the county and the city of Lone Tree to re-engage back into the Community Development Block Grant program, or CDBG as it's referred to. The grant provides federal funding. It makes available federal dollars for low and moderate income, seniors, and the disabled largely. It was my great privilege to have served on that board representing the city of Lone Tree for about 10 years. And I just saw how it benefited so many residents in the community. Tonight is informational only. The Jennifer Eby will make a presentation here shortly just to provide sort of the background and information on the program and what's expected. For your information, we do plan to come back June 16th for council action on an intergovernmental agreement, and that's being reviewed by our legal staff at this time. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Eby. She is the Director of Community Resources and Services for Douglas County. She has led this program since its in action in Douglas County, so many years ago, and along with her great staff, and I really refer to them as passionate professionals. They really do the hard work and the heavy lifting on all the accountability and reporting that's required for this program. So Jennifer will provide some background and answer questions, and with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jennifer Eby.
Thanks, Jennifer, and welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor Millet and council members. Thank you for the introduction, Jennifer. I just want to add that it was an honor to have her on our advisory board for so many years. You have a very knowledgeable staff person on board. I'm here this evening to just give you a brief overview of the Community Development Block Grant, or as Jennifer said, the CDBG program. And just a review of what HUD requires for the county to requalify for this program. So next slide, please. The CDBG program is essentially administered through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Douglas County became eligible to receive those funds in 2004 when we reached the 200,000 population threshold. And the CDBG program is primarily used to benefit low and moderate income persons. It can also be used to prevent or eliminate slum and blight conditions or it can be used to help address an urgent community need, like we're seeing now with the we're experiencing with COVID. So next slide, please. So between 2004 and 2015, the program provided over $9.4 million for the benefit of the low and moderate income residents throughout the county. The county set certain priorities on how the funds could be spent, and that was based on citizen input that we received. The priorities that were developed at the time included housing, public services, public facilities, economic development, and infrastructure. The organizations that are eligible to apply for these funds can be nonprofit organizations, our Douglas County Housing Partnership, local participating jurisdictions, and special districts with taxing authority. So next slide, please. So as I believe you are all likely aware, the county opted out of the CDBG program in 2016, basically due to what we felt were untenable regulations regarding fair housing. And just as a bit of background, the fair housing regulations are generally referred to as affirmatively furthering fair housing, or AFFH. And those regulations originated as part of the 1974 civil rights legislation. The regulations were originally implemented without much clear guidance, and it created a fair amount of uncertainty in how to comply with the fair housing laws for some grantees. So in 2013, in order to address this, HUD tried to establish new regulations where they were using essentially an untested approach to address discrimination by increasing opportunities, is how they looked at it. The most concerning aspect of these new regulations from the county's position was the potential to require jurisdictions to change their zoning districts if the designation appeared to limit housing options or to constrain opportunities. So the county at that point really fought hard against these changes for a 3-year period, but then when HUD finalized the AFFH regulations, that's the point where the county decided to leave the program and wait until HUD was able to address these concerns to consider rejoining the program. At this point now, over the last 4 years, the county has continued to engage with HUD and has repeatedly requested for these continued changes to the AFFH regulations. And then we were happy to see that in January of 2020, HUD announced proposed rules that did address most of the most serious concerns that the county had identified. And with these proposed changes, the Douglas County staff believes that the AFFH regulations will no longer threaten our local control, and the methodologies can be successfully used to affirmatively further fair housing, and they're much more reasonable for us going forward. So next slide. So to re-qualify for the CDBG program at this point, HUD requires all counties to work with our local and engage with our local jurisdictions to determine what their interest is in participating in the program. So that's the process that we're going through right now. And then over the next several months, the county will start to develop a new 5-year consolidated plan, which is basically our long-term plan for, it's a 5-year plan for determining how the funds will be used. That will all be based on a citizen input process. So that plan is due to HUD no later than August 16th of 2021. And I know that sounds like a really long time frame, but it is quite an involved process. Not to mention that HUD will only allow us to submit that plan within a certain time frame, and they don't allow us to do it sooner. We would love to, but they don't allow us to do that. So throughout this planning process, we'll be identifying what our new goals are, what our new priorities are for the CDBG program. We'll do that based on citizen input again, and working in partnership with our local jurisdictions that are participating in the program. So that will essentially set the course for our next 5-year process from 2021 to 2025. And then as we move forward, the county will determine how the application process will be managed, and we'll do that again with input from our local jurisdictions. Next slide. So HUD estimates that the county will receive an allocation of $1,056,000 in the fiscal year of 2021, which actually starts October 1st, 2021. So again, long process. We wanted to give you some examples of allowable uses for the CDBG expenditures and how that might be utilized within the city of Lone Tree, or how it has been utilized in the past. We used the previous priorities that were identified to give some ideas, but the funds can be utilized for attainable housing. We worked in partnership with the Douglas County Housing Partnership and provided funding to support their first-time homebuyer assistance program. And that is available to people who live or work in Douglas County, and if they are low and moderate income qualified. So they can use that for their down payment assistance, just helps them bridge the gap a little bit. We can also use it to invest in rental units for low and moderate income families and seniors. I understand that you have some of those units potentially coming at the Ridgegate station line. So funding could be utilized as long as, hopefully the timing works out for that, to be able to potentially utilize funds to help support that program, that development. And could be utilized for future attainable housing projects as well. It can also be utilized for public services. This is a pretty broad category, and there's a lot of different things that can be done under public services. Some of the most popular ones that we did was working with our nonprofit partners across the county, and most of them were able to make funding available, throughout the county to residents who might need emergency rent or utility assistance because maybe they're experiencing, some kind of an issue with their job, or they've had some sort of an accident that doesn't allow them to continue working. So we have utilized that in the past for emergency rent and utility assistance quite a bit. It can also be used to help, say, senior transportation. We've actually utilized the funds quite a bit to provide senior services in several of our areas, because I do want to mention that both the seniors and individuals with a disability are automatically qualified as low and moderate income qualified. They're I forget the term, but they're qualified to receive that. In addition to that, we have used the funds for public facilities. Usually this is an expansion of a nonprofit organization. So a good example of that is we were able to use the CDBG funds to help the Crisis Center build their new facility. I think about $300,000 was put into that overall. And another example of that was helping Help and Hope, which was formerly known as the Douglas Elbert Task Force, when they purchased their new buildings. And sometimes we also use it to just purchase equipment to help them, provide their services more efficiently. So those are just some examples for you. Next slide. So we absolutely encourage the City of Lone Tree to join Douglas County and participate in the CDBG program. Should the city decide to become a participating jurisdiction in the program, you would need to approve the intergovernmental agreement, which Jennifer has already mentioned. A draft of that has been sent to your staff for review. That draft is based on HUD guidelines. It's developed based on guidelines that they provide us. And then if you do choose to become a participating jurisdiction, then the residents of Lone Tree then become eligible to benefit for the CDBG funded programs. So this concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so very much, Jennifer. Appreciate that. And I'll start with our Mayor Pro Tem, Brunick. Questions?
No, thank you, Jennifer. Great information. This is new to me. I hadn't heard of it before, so I'm thrilled to hear, especially with our move, as you mentioned, at the light rail station to some housing that could really, use that type of subsidy. So that's great news. We appreciate that and really appreciate you coming to speak with us.
Sure. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that update. I wasn't familiar with this program, didn't know it had been suspended, but glad to see we're moving back towards it. And yeah, can see some connections to the Douglas County Partnership in terms of some of the things they're trying to do. So I look forward to participating in a review of the IGA and moving forward with the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carpenter.
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. It's a well-needed product, so we appreciate your work and partnership on it.
And Councilmember Shaw.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen, for being here tonight. That was a great presentation, and I am so pleased to hear that that we have an opportunity to sign the IGA and that CDBG is coming back. Thank you.
So, and again, thank you, Jennifer, for being here this evening and for your great work on this program since 2004. And I know all the other great work you're doing on behalf of us for the county. I had a question for the $1,056,000. Is that inclusive or exclusive of contributions that Parker or Castle Rock couldn't receive? Because it's my understanding, because of their population, they qualify to apply independently for this.
Mm-hmm. No,
So
it's a great question.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you didn't. You did it. It's hard virtually. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. Our understanding from HUD is that proposed allocation would not be affected by the town of Parker or the town of Castle Rock's decision as to whether or not they want to become a participating jurisdiction. I can give you an update that both the towns of Castle Rock and Parker had to make a decision as to whether or not they were going to join the county's program. That had to happen for them a little bit sooner than it does for the other jurisdictions, just because they are eligible to become their own. The town of Parker did choose to become part of the county's program, but the town of Castle Rock has chosen not to become part of the county's program, but they are still considering whether or not they will become their own entitlement. So that could mean that the allocation could increase because the town of Parker has agreed to join the county's program.
And thank you. And if, just as a follow-up, if the town of Castle Rock chooses, so they're not going to be a part of this, but they could choose to go out on their own and participate independently. Since they're not part of this IGA, they would not be eligible for any distribution of this $1 million+ dollars. Is that correct?
That is correct. We would not be able to utilize any of these funds within the jurisdiction of the town of Castle Rock. Okay. And if we make awards to different nonprofits, they would not be able to utilize those awards to benefit town of Castle Rock residents. So
okay. So as of right now, then they are excluded from. Should the county move forward? Should Lone Tree participate? We Castle Pines, unincorporated Douglas County, and potentially Parker will all be potential beneficiaries of this $1 million or so. Is that a fair statement? Okay. And historically, have there been any nonprofits in the city of Lone Tree that have been awarded any monies from the CDBG money between the 2004 period and 2016 period?
Great question. So we have not had nonprofits that are actually located in
Okay.
the city of Lone Tree, but
Right.
we have definitely had nonprofits that serve Lone Tree residents just because they serve either all of Douglas County or your area. So a good example of that, a couple good examples of that is the Crisis Center, in that they serve the entire county. And if there is a concern with domestic violence, they're able to utilize our funds to benefit them. We have also provided funding on a very regular basis to Help and Hope, which was the formerly Douglas Elbert Task Force, and they regularly provided funding. They would have been able to do that for Lone Tree residents should they have needed that. So I don't know if I have any exact numbers of residents that qualified, but any of those nonprofits that serve countywide would have been able to serve Lone Tree residents.
Great. That was my understanding. And I was on council when the county commissioners did make the decision, and it was a very challenging decision. And I know a lot of those nonprofits that had been relying on funding through CDBG were really hit hard by the decision to withdraw from the program. And this question is probably for Jennifer Drybread, but I would think that we do have a new nonprofit that Jennifer, you may not have heard about. It's Tall Tales Ranch, and it serves a community, an underserved community, and it's housing and communal housing for folks on the neuroatypical spectrum. And so, Jennifer, would Tall Tales Ranch be an example of a Lone Tree nonprofit that could certainly apply for this funding? We recognize it's a very competitive process, but would that be would they be eligible? And as a follow-up to that, can you think of any other Lone Tree nonprofits that would be eligible to apply for the CDBG monies? I'm thinking of the Lone Tree Arts Center, the foundation, because of the impact programming that we do there. Would either of those be eligible to apply?
Did you ask? Are you asking me? Sorry, the Jennifer.
Well, I don't know if Jennifer EB. I'm sorry if you know them as well as Jennifer Drybread knows them, and I know she was very involved in the prior distribution of funding. So I'm just questioning eligibility. Are those two organizations or subsets of them, do you think they would be eligible to apply, Jennifer, based on what you know right now? I know it's not a definitive yay or nay.
They would be eligible to apply, absolutely.
Okay.
And we would look at that. I am aware, probably not with a lot of detail, but I am aware of Tall Tales Ranch. And I believe that my understanding is they serve at least a portion of individuals with maybe developmental disabilities. Yes. So they would certainly be eligible to apply. Yes, absolutely.
And they would be able to apply for capital funding as well as to build the facility in addition to operating.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful news. And I think as we grow as a city, it's hard to believe that it was 2004 that Douglas County exceeded 200,000, but boy, we haven't stopped growing. So Lone Tree, I think more to come from us as well. And I think the Mayor Pro Tem acknowledged some of the affordable housing, but that's just the beginning in Lone Tree. And I know we anticipate some additional projects on the east side of I-25 that would benefit from this type of funding as well. So again, I don't have any, that was all the questions for me. But again, want to thank you very much for taking time to be with us this evening and to share your knowledge and for the great work you've done on our behalf. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And thank you for considering the program.
Wonderful. Okay, moving on to administrative matters, and we have a motion to reschedule for Monday at the Monday, June 15th regular city council meeting to Tuesday, June 16th, 2020. And what I will say about the year 2020 is that it requires resilience and flexibility in all things, and yet this is another one. So I think our City Clerk Jay, Rob is going to introduce this.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Like you said, we tried to predict the year 2020. And one of those shifts in our schedule was from the regular city council meeting on Tuesday, June 16th to Monday, June 15th, to be flexible around the annual conference hosted by the Colorado Municipal League. And as we know, that was canceled and none of that played out the way we thought. And so the suggested motion is that the city council go back to the original scheduled meeting to Tuesday, June 16th.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if we have any questions on this, but I will look for a motion from council.
I move to reschedule the Monday, June 15th, 2020 regular city council meeting to Tuesday, June 16th, 2020.
And I second.
And all in favor, let's just say it, aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, it
Thank
passes
you.
unanimously. So thanks, Jay, for presenting that. And, you know, again, man plans and God laughs, and we will continue to be resilient and flexible in the year 2020. So now it turns to council comments. And I know we've been trying to keep these brief during our virtual meetings, but I do want to make sure council has the opportunity to speak on anything that is of concern, interest, or they want to share with all of us. So let's start with Councilmember Anderson. I don't know if you have any thoughts this evening you'd like to share.
Just mention that we continue to be safer at home, and many of my contacts around the city, I find that seniors are still very concerned about their personal health and other vulnerable populations that may be directly in their household or they know well. So, you know, it's exciting to see the reopening of businesses and the relaxation of restrictions. And I am personally very pleased that gyms and recreation facilities will come back online. That's important to wellness in our community. But for our senior population, I think we need to keep in mind that we are faced with safer at home to protect our families and do not see any short-term relief from that.
Thank you. Councilmember Shaw, any comments this evening?
I do have one. I'll kind of build on what Mike was saying, that it was very heartening to see businesses start to reopen and to feel like we've turned the corner. And then I find myself heartbroken with the devastation and violence that's been occurring in our country and in the metro area. So I will simply pray for the family of George Floyd, for our country, for law enforcement, and pray that there be peace. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Carpenter.
Yeah, it's a crazy time in the world, isn't it? Right. So I just want to acknowledge my thoughts and my support for the Lone Tree Police Department and the leadership that Chief Wilson exhibits. And so we support you 100%. You know, when you look at something that's positive or optimistic in the future, it's the youth. And I had the privilege of the last couple of weeks of helping out the Youth Commission in the Outstanding Youth of Lone Tree selection process. And I wanted to thank Austin and Liana for all their help on that as well. And it was really refreshing to see the great future that we truly do have ahead of us. There's some rock star candidates out there. It's always hard to come down to one finalist, but it was really intriguing watching the commission work together and make the selection on their own. So it was a great process, and that's what I have some faith in the future. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Jay. And Kath, Mayor Pro Tem Brunick.
Yeah, so also so excited to see so many of the openings over the last couple weeks. Just really is an amazing feat, really, by these restaurants and by the mall and our retail establishments to get back online and to get working. And so many thank yous pouring in from folks who are just super grateful to be back on the front lines working and kind of getting back to their normal life. I took my children several times to the mall to make sure we were there and supporting the efforts. Everybody's happy to be out of the house, so really grateful for that. Obviously, you all know I'm a huge advocate for First Amendment rights on freedom of religion and freedom of speech. So it's a fascinating time right now to see the upheaval and the unrest, which I think is always part of why I'm so proud to be an American. And I just really implore people to do it in the most peaceful way that they know how, because you know, when it crosses that line to rioting, really everyone stops listening. And the point of these kind of times is that people should voice and protest. That's how our world gets better. And it has to be done with an appreciation for the right to do such things and the really exciting change that can occur through our citizens really rising up in peaceful manner. So like when my heart goes out to the many people that are being affected by both the acts that we're seeing as well as the people making really poor choices around rioting and whatnot. So I have lots of prayer to our family. I sit with my kids every night and talk about this topic, and I think that in many ways I'm just really grateful for that dialogue with the young adults who will be leading in the future. So many thanks to everybody for the work you do every day.
Thanks, Kathy, and I think I completely share the sentiments expressed by council in the sense that we had some very exciting news with the reopening of with the variance that was given for the reopening of our mall and the businesses coming back, and to know that 80 of the businesses on the mall property were opening on Sunday at noon was exciting for all of us. And I think that joy and excitement and of turning the corner really has been tempered by the devastation that is occurring in our community and in our country. And I think everyone has condemned the actions of the 4 officers that were involved in the murder of Mr. Floyd. And I think it has provoked a real unrest in our community because of the real lack of public trust in some law enforcement throughout our country. And what we have that is a very special thing in the city of Lone Tree is public trust in our local law enforcement. And I think that we are blessed to have that. The gift that we have is a gift I would like to see spread throughout the country, so every community has that same level of public trust in their law enforcement officers, the men and women that serve us. And I think we all owe them a great deal of debt, but I also think we need to acknowledge that not everyone has that same sense. And that I guess what I want to strive and commit to doing is really work with partners to try and increase the public trust. I spent my morning in the city of Denver this morning in City Park, working with leadership of the Metro Mayor's Caucus, working alongside Mayor Hancock and folks on his staff and some amazing citizens that came out to clean up, to remove the graffiti, and to try and help restore confidence in our government and in our communities. And I am going to be looking for continued opportunities for dialogue about what we can do in the city of Lone Tree and with our partners in the metro area. And with my awesome partners on council and the tremendous staff that we have in the city of Lone Tree. I think we are a shining light in the city of Lone Tree, our government. I think we function very effectively, very efficiently. I think our North Star really is the public good. And I want to work hard to make sure every community has the same gifts that we have in the city of Lone Tree. And I look forward to the great people I get to sit next to on council and the great team at the city of Lone Tree. The Lone Tree Police Department has been tremendous, but I want every community to have that same feeling. So with that, we are adjourned, and thank you all for your time this evening.